My name's Chris Billett.
My name is Paul Anderson.
My name is Mark Boyd, and you listen to the Blue Army podcast.
Hello, my name is Derek Combs, and I listen to the Blue Army podcast.
Where is Morgan's Bar?
It's in the lane next to what's that? I know it's not called Circle Bar anymore. I can't remember. I don't know what it's called.
Now.
Lux. It's pretty much next door to Lux, pretty much.
It's the one that used to be. I think it was it Molly's Speakeasy or something.
It was It was a flash in the pan kind of bar for a little
that
while.
Was really kind of brief, wasn't it?
That was brief. Yeah, that was brief. It was one of those ones where there's a guy called Seth who used to own Circle Bar, and Seth owned for a little bit of time, or had the lease on. He didn't own it, sorry. He had the lease on the two, what is now Morgan's Bar, what used to be Sally's Speakeasy. Now he was happier with those units being empty than he was to hand them over to Seb at Open Mind and let Seb knock the wall through and extend Open Mind through that way, because that was the plan. The plan was for Seb to extend Open Mind through that way. But because of Seth having the lease, he never had the opportunity to knock through. And now obviously Seth's gone, and Morgan's Bar's moving into that space. But there's a space right next door to it as well. There's another space like literally next door to it. And then you've got Outrageous, which no one's doing anything with as well. But I'm pretty sure that's still owned by Dan Russell, because it has posters from his businesses inside the windows. I assume he's still using it to at least put posters up in the windows for like the sauce and stuff like that. I assume. But that whole lane, a little bit of investment, that could look fantastic. That whole lane could really have a bit of like nightlife spirit to it.
They just recently tidied it up, didn't they? Like the roof or something.
Bits were falling off, and that weren't they? They had the big old net up on the roof. But obviously, because Circle Bar took a tank, and now Lux is in there, so that's going to be a little bit of a thing to wait and to see if that comes off the ground. You've got those like old tanning studios, nail salons, and stuff along that side. And obviously, like I said, you've got the fact that Outrageous isn't open anymore. So you could do a lot in that lane. You could do a lot in that lane. And the Meantime seems to be doing pretty well as well. Shout out for the Meantime, their food is delicious.
Yeah, I know. Is that just permanent now? Because they were gonna move into organised, or somehow it was organised for them to have like the lease of that really cheap, or they got like something on the rates or something, because they were all set to move in next door to Central Plaza, and it got demolished, and they had to cordon off that whole street.
Oh, right, okay. I wasn't aware of that. No, I wasn't aware of that being a thing. That's still a good. They've redone the upstairs as well. Right, okay. That's why it's called In the Meantime.
I think they were like a week away from opening. I can't remember what they were going to call the bar. It's something to do with the walls, because it's like near like West Walls kind of area. I think it was I think it was going to be called Within the Walls or something. Or was that the name of the street festival that they had? But yeah, it was going to be. I think it was going to be called Within the Walls, and they were like a week away from opening or something when the council had to close off that entire section, and they kind of like scuppered them. So some kind of deal was done where they were able to get into that building and open in the meantime. It's been a while now. I can't remember what building they were about to move into. So I don't know. I think maybe they've kind of like decided, no, we'll just stay here.
Well, if the rates are cheap enough and they're making enough money, and it's only going to be able to expense to get another redeck done or whatever, then you may as well. And I mean, the thing with the Carlisle food scene is at the moment, and I don't want to sound disrespectful or anything like that, but it's very Scooby-Doo chase scene. It's very much everything's a bit similar. Do you know what I mean? Everything's a bit similar. It's like Italian, Indian, and then I don't know what you call it really, like gastro pub food. That seems to be the big dominator. That seems to be the big dominator in Carlisle.
Few Thai restaurants.
Yeah, there's a few Thai restaurants, but the majority of places are sort of like they'll do a bit of everything kind of places.
Yeah.
So you've got like your Coco Mills, your Last Zebras. Yeah.
I mean,
pretty
much
sorry.
because the Van Leeuwenhoek Empire. But
yeah, so like if why are they just doing the same menu in like 5 different locations?
Yeah, but then like Luke Jarman the other week. So like, obviously he's from London.
Right.
And he lives in Penrith, so he's used to like the small market town scene. He's not really used to kind of like Carlisle's small city scene and what to expect from it. So like, we were going to go for something to eat on a weekday after his work back before Christmas, and it was like, there's a Turkish restaurant. There's a Turkish place on the corner near where he works. He's always been going on about Alexandros, but he didn't like realize at the time that these are restaurants, formal. You have to go in and wait to be seated, and it's table service. Because we were just thinking, let's go for a bite to eat after work. And in the past, we normally go to just like the Griffin or somewhere, because you can just go in, sit down, place an order, get some drinks. So yeah, like in Carlisle, there's not many restaurants that aren't formal. There's not many places you can eat that aren't kind of formal restaurants.
I know you said other than chain places.
And we couldn't get in anyway, which is another thing with them. I went and had a look at the Turkish restaurant and like I had rammed in there. It was just before Christmas. I think there was a couple of Christmas parties there. I mean, we ended up going to Brewdog. We had a good time, but yeah, he just kind of like, we kind of like discussed on the way down that like what Brewdog is, where they do food, but it's informal. You don't need to book a table. You don't go in and wait to be seated and stuff. You just go in, find a table, and then go to the bar and say, I want this. I mean, that's obviously a lot more common there in London and in big cities generally. So like, he just kind of like assumed that, there's a Turkish bar or Turkish restaurant, there's a Greek restaurant. He kind of assumed that would be kind of like, we'll just go in, walk up to the bar, say, can I have a souvlaki? And then go and find a table.
Yeah,
no, yeah.
Like we're charging £13 for a kebab that you can get for £4 down the road. You're sitting down, you're enjoying the ambience. But no, I mean, maybe the Carlisle food scene is its own podcast, and maybe we need a podcast just to talk about the Carlisle food scene, maybe like once a month or something. But
coming out your ears.
That's it, man. I've got so many podcast ideas and not enough time to record them all. But people aren't here.
I was gonna say, yeah.
People aren't here for us.
Should probably
talk about the food scene. Yeah, I think we're agreeing with each other, even though we're talking over each other.
I was saying we should probably get on with this podcast, or I might have to end up skipping lunch.
That's it, man. We can't have that. And that's more food talk as well. So just before we veer back down that alleyway, we'll go away from that later. We'll get things started. Things started. Although I did enjoy that. That was a nice little pre-ramble. A bit longer than normal.
Can't remember how we got onto it.
I can't remember either. But a bit of a teaser trailer for a food podcast we might do.
Oh yeah, you've been recording the whole thing.
Yeah. And for a fact I won't be asked editing it later. Like.
Yeah. At what point did you start recording it?
Mate, we've been going for about 4 minutes now.
Yeah. I feel like you missed all the preamble about the bars in the lanes, but
Oh no, I think I got that. I think I started when we were on that little curve, and then I was thinking this will be an easy little preamble people can relate to.
Yeah.
And then we've been going for about 5 minutes now, and I've still not said all right, Marra.
Oh yeah. Say all right, Marra, then.
All right, Marras, how's it going? And welcome back to this, the Blue Army podcast. It is episode 52, and you should have already guessed by now. Well, I suppose you might not have guessed by now if you've not listened before. We've got new listeners coming all the time, buddy, apparently. This week's guest is none other than mine and your favourite, Wills is here. Say hello, Wills.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Morning.
I mean, most people would have already guessed it was going to be you. We've had quite a long, extended preamble there, and so there's no point in hanging around. We'll just crack straight on with things. And if you're a regular listener to the Blue Army podcast, you'll know you're in for a treat right now, because it is time for the Blue Army podcast Joke of the Week. Is he having a laugh? I think he's trying to. It's the Blue Army podcast Joke of the Week. Get in. Right. I don't know what I'm going to do after this week, mate, because these are the 3 jokes I've been teasing for a while, and this is the last one.
Look jokes up again.
I am. I'm going to have to start looking for new jokes, but this is the one I've been saving. So, I mean, hopefully it doesn't let me down. Okay, what do you call a dog magician?
Oh, I don't know. What do you call a dog magician?
A labracadabrador. Hey! We'll have that. Right. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. The jokes might take a bit of a nosedive, but we'll still be doing them, because it's not about if they're funny or not. It's just about consistency.
You've got a week to find a good joke, man.
I've got a full week to find a joke. But I'd say what we've gotten onto this habit of doing jokes in the style of question, funny answer, and then probably because I'm crap at telling any other kind of joke.
You might kind of like mix it up a little bit. Look for other types of jokes.
I said, my wife.
Oh, no, the mother-in-law.
take my wife. No, literally take her, man. We'll see where we end up next week. There was a blue joke someone told me at work.
Dawson and Groucho Marx.
There's a bit of a blue joke someone told me at work, but there's a clean version of the same joke. Yeah. I might give it a go next week. But blue jokes don't exactly go down well with me. I'm not too good at telling jokes. So I mean, we'll see how we get on. Right, let's crack on with things. So that means we're going to push through and tell you, the listeners, and tell Will what you've got to look forward to during this week's podcast. It's time for your roundup. So we'll be opening things up by talking through the Carlisle's most recent pair of matches. We had a midweek clash against Hartlepool, which Wills was in attendance for, and he'll give us a little bit of a match report and his feelings about the Hartlepool game, and then we'll push through and we'll have a double header of match crack as we'll talk about Carlisle United's unfortunate 3-0 defeat to runaway league leaders Forest Green Rovers, before we take a little bit of a look at your reaction, the listeners, and see what you had to say about Carlisle's results against Forest Green Rovers. Then we'll push on to talk about next weekend's opponents, or at the time of recording, this weekend's opponents, which is Sutton United. They're having a bit of a surprising season. A lot of pundits wouldn't have expected them to be flying quite as high as they are. And then we'll push on to do a bit of a news roundup. There's transfer news in there. There's ex-Blue players news in there. And there's just some general interesting crack for any Carlisle United fan. But first, mate, the new tradition that we have here on the Blue Army podcast, it's time for the birthdays. Let's take a walk down Nostalgia Avenue. Right, the first birthday this week is Paul Bertine, and he's 43 this week. Former Carlisle United defender, and another former Carlisle United defender, Mark Winstanley, is 50 for this week. So that's one for some of the older listeners out there. Well, a pair for some of the older listeners out there. Next on the list is 33 years of age, still playing, I believe, for Stoke City, former lone defender, James Chester. Mate, what a brick at the back. What a brick James Chester was, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was there was like a little period where we did get a few decent loanees in. James Chester stood out. I don't know if he was here the same time as Ben Marshall was, but yeah, it was, and went on to have a good career as well. So yeah, fond memories.
He was a good player, mate. I rated him quite highly. I think he was on loan from Man United at the time where he got brought over. He was about 19, I think. And yeah, he stood out for me as a top player, but he is one of those players that makes me feel old, if you know what I mean, because he was a teenager when he was with us and now he's in the back nine of his career. Very similar age to myself as well. Another ex-loanee and only a young fish is 22-year-old Connor Simpson. He was on loan from Preston, I believe, and has since done okay, still trying to push himself into that Preston starting lineup. Now, we have another birthday. Happy 31st birthday to currently injured, but current Carlisle United player, Kelvin Mellor. Mate, Kelvin Mellor is a player that I've been impressed with since he signed on the dotted line. He's quite consistent with his performances. He's been one of the better players for us. I think he was one of the defenders that stood out, being able to sort of like whip the rest of them back into shape. In his early performances for Carlisle United, I think I took note of the fact that he's quite a vocal player on the pitch, and I think that's really helped with the Carlisle United defence getting organised more this season. If you had to give Kelvin Mellor a grade out of 10 for his sort of a summer signing, shall we say, what would you give it as a signing?
I'd give him a solid 7. Yeah. Just for the reasons that you say, he's kind of come in, he's done well defensively. And there's not really much more you can ask than that.
Yeah, I feel like he's a solid player. He'll keep pushing forward with us, and I think he's probably due another year. I don't think Joel Senior is going to be ready by the end of this season. I don't think there's many a better right back option out there at the moment, so I'd be quite happy signing Mellor up for another year. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, we've got Mellor and Senior as our right back options. Senior's obviously been signed, with an eye towards next season as well. I think he's contracted to next season. Perfectly happy with those being the same two in a hopefully more competitive squad next season. See how Senior does. Obviously, he hasn't sort of like had much game time with us yet, so still yet to see whether he's going to be the next George Tanner. But yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certainly right back even. I'm not seeing it as a priority in the summer if we've got those two. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like what keeps everything in order in a way. It makes right back a position we don't really have to worry about. The last two birthdays that we have is former loanees Matt Young and Kenneth Carroll. Do you remember Kenneth Carroll? I remember him getting sent off.
Yeah, exactly.
he got sent off against his former club in a match that the Swindon fans said Kenneth Carroll will get sent off, and lo, he did.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot to note from either of the two pair there, but that's not the point. The point is, happy birthday to all of the ex-Blues that celebrated a birthday this week. And with that, that is the end of our birthday segment. Right, mate. Last week, we were both intending on going to Carlisle versus Hartlepool, but silly me decided to order some food, and the food delivery was late, which made me late for the game. And then by that point, my missus was like, "Are you going to go to the football now? You're going to spend another 20 quid now? If you think it's a bit late, it's a bit silly, isn't it, leaving now?" So I didn't bother, and I didn't go. But Wills, you went to Carlisle versus Hartlepool, and before you give us your thoughts on the 0-0 draw, I'm going to go through the Carlisle United starting lineup for their game against Hartlepool because we stick to tradition around here. And talking about sticking to tradition, you might have a case of deja vu once again with this Carlisle United lineup. We had Mark Howard in goal with Mella, Feeney, McDonald and Armour in the midfield, Dickinson, Guy, Mellish and Gibson in the midfield. And the only change was Patrick coming on into the midfield, into the attack with Otamei, with Whelan dropping to the bench and Mellish being pushed back into the midfield. Now, was that the right decision in your opinion? Because Whelan, for me, has been a consistently good performer in that midfield role for Carlisle United. And when you put Mellish into that midfield role, I mean, Beach was trying that in the early part of the season, and it didn't seem to go very well for Beach. So, what did you think of the starting lineup being slightly changed from the last game?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I would have preferred to see Whelan in there. I probably don't need to air my views on Mellish again. Don't want to be too critical of him, but like I say, like some players are defenders, some are midfielders, some are attackers. John Mellish is just John Mellish. There's a time and a place for him, but it's just difficult finding that time and place. And sometimes it goes right, and you obviously went right for Beach a lot, parts of last season. But also sometimes he can just be a passenger if he's in a role because he's not 100% any particular role.
Yeah, in the midfield, as a part of a midfield too, is not necessarily a strong established midfielder, and if he's not in the game as much, he is an emotional player and he'll throw himself into the game, which means he can pick up a yellow card, or he starts being cheeky with referees. We've all seen it happen. He picks up silly yellow cards in games that he gets frustrated with. Now, last season under Beach, when he was playing in more of a midfield role, it was more with a midfield three, and he had Riley and Guy, and they kind of gave Mellish the freedom just to sort of go wherever he wanted in the middle of the park. To a certain extent, but when you're a part of a midfield two, and you've got a shaky defense, then you do need to have a bit more, what's the word for it, discipline maybe when it comes to your position on the pitch and a definite role. And Mellish looked a little bit lost in this game, unfortunately.
It'd be interesting to know the how things go between a manager and a player when the manager wants the player to switch roles. Mellish, obviously, when he was moved into midfield towards the back end of the cancelled season, he kind of like went there enthusiastically and just wants to play, and he wasn't the first choice at the back. And then obviously kind of like Beach wanted to turn him into a midfielder and built him up. You can kind of criticise Mellish for perhaps not really fully becoming, learning the entirety of the midfield art. But maybe Mellish can be a bit frustrated that he spent his youth career and everything learning to be a defender, then ends up as a midfielder. And, what's the dynamic like? Is Mellish frustrated that he has had to change roles? Obviously, some players will just say no, maybe, and you've maybe got the option to say I don't want to. It might cause you to fall out with your manager, but might end up with you leaving the club and going somewhere where you can continue to play in your preferred role. Mellish sort of, obviously went along with the idea of going to midfield, but doesn't seem to have really helped his career all that much. It's certainly got him some attention because he has that goal scoring ability, and it kind of catches the eye because he's quite different as a midfielder, even more different as a striker, and people often comment on things like that. Be interesting to know, like, if you ever get an ex-pro interview with somebody who has, in the past for Carlisle being switched to a different position. If kind of like they have any kind of views on that, like what's it like? You know, the manager come up and say, "I want you to be a midfielder now," and you know, what if you say no? Well, you know, all that kind of thing.
There was a little bit of that, and when I spoke to Jason Price, the old Afro goal machine, he spoke about going from being a right winger to more of an attacker, a striker. And obviously, we spoke a little bit about the fact that as a winger, like Thierry Henry, like the Welsh Thierry Henry, you'll love that. As a winger, you get the ball into your feet, and you've got enough space 9 times out of 10. Turn around and face your fullback and run at him with the ball. As an attacker, you attack with your back to goal. When you're playing in that central position, it's a lot harder to run down defenses because they don't give you the opportunity on the ball in the first place. So it can take some strikers a couple of seasons to get the experience to figure out how to play with your back to goal, how to get from this way to that way. What's the most effective way to turn a defender? Is it running in behind? Is it taking the ball into feet? Is it doing 1-2 touches? Or it's a case of building up your arsenal so you can obviously, you know, play with your back to goal rather than the other way around, which you'd be used to as a winger. Now, when we're talking about going from a midfield position defensively into a midfield position, John Mellish doesn't look like a classic centre back. He doesn't. He looks more like a Morgan Feeney type, maybe. He's not a big meathead. He's got an attitude which you need to have to play in defence because you're going to be getting rattled all game long. But as far as good tackling, I've never really seen it from Mellish, even in the midfield. He's good at interceptions. That seems to be his way. He can win the ball back based on interceptions, but it's not really because he's chasing players down and he's making good tackles.
It was a left back at one point. I can't remember. Was he a left back before he was a centre back, or was he a centre back before he was a left back? I know he played quite a lot for us at left back in his first season with us. I can't remember who we had to set. Or did we have who did we have a centre back in that season? Which was it was the COVID cancelled season. So the season Presley started.
Was that the year after Gerrard or the year before Gerrard? Anthony Gerrard.
I think it was the year after Gerrard because
after Gerrard.
Stephen Presley was the manager, and then got sacked, and Beach came in, and I'll tell you what. You carry on talking. If you come back to me and I have the answer, I'll tell you.
I mean, unfortunately for me, I'm starting to lose a little bit of patience with John Mellish. If you're not going to give him that consistency and put him in a certain position, he is very popular with the fans. So he does often, if you go to the games, the fans back him, and he only needs to do about like one thing. He only needs to do about one thing to get the fans behind him, and it's like Super Johnny Mellish. It's like, mate, he literally just all he did is track back. All he's done is track back and made a half decent slide tackle. But it's like he gets, the fans are there for him. What's that?
It was Hayden and Webster.
Oh, were they the two centre back pairings?
Yeah, it was Webster and Knight Percival, and then sort of after Beach came in, Knight Percival kind of lost his place, and Hayden started playing Branthwaite at right back until he left.
I was going to say Branthwaite was in that little cheeky period.
Yeah.
And then obviously Mark Ellis was sort of in and out before he's sort of on his way to Yeovil.
Mark Ellis?
Max Hunt.
Max Hunt.
Max Hunt was in and out the team a little bit before he sort of like got shocked over. But
and Jack Iredale and Christy Elliott were in the team as well, but they kind of like lost their places. Well, Christy Elliott went in January, didn't he? I think Jack Iredale still played from time to time at left back, but I think Mellish played at left back a lot at that point.
Yeah. I mean, We do keep coming back to Mellish, but he does seem to be a standout player on the pitch when he does play. And he's one of the least consistent players in the starting lineup. You can have a good game, a bad game, a good game, bad game, bad game, bad game. He seems to be on a little bit of a run of not playing too great at the moment, not having too much of an impact on the games themselves. And I mean, you just have to see where it goes. I'd like to see Zach Clough brought into that midfield role, but apparently he's not interested in playing in the midfield. He wants to play up front. So that's another sort of like headache to deal with. Carlisle United have added defensive options this week, which means that Whelan might be able to sort of be more registered as a midfield player now rather than a centre-back covering. But we'll come to that when we come to it. Mate, the result itself, a 0-0 draw. If you look at the stats, Carlisle had so many shots, nearly 3 times more shots than Hartlepool had. But it's the tale of our season, isn't it? It doesn't matter how many shots we get off a goal, nothing's going in. And it's the best opportunities that we're getting are hitting the post from 30 yards out. We're not working the ball into the box. So there's no progress being made with us being able to work the ball into the box. Now, like I've already mentioned, Will, you were there at the game, so you have a lot better and maybe an analysis of the situation than I did. On paper, obviously 0-0 sounds like an even contest, but when you read through the stats, it looks like Carlisle, you know, were really trying to win the game and Hartlepool were just trying to hold us back a bit. Was that what happened in front of you?
It looked a lot more even on the pitch than the stats suggest, which it didn't. I say we've got 17 shots and 6 on target. Didn't feel like we had that many. Hartlepool had quite a bit more possession, so there was quite a lot of Hartlepool on the ball and us kind of backing off a bit. And then both teams did have kind of a couple of decent chances each, like actual, like, you know, that I would call actual good chances. We hit the bar once, Hartlepool hit the bar once, both kind of shots from range. Both teams had one kind of like a bit of a scramble in the box that they couldn't get away. And it might be that, because sometimes you see that and it doesn't actually even result in a shot. I can't exactly remember. Neither of those chances appeared on the highlights, even though in my head that was the big chance to score. I think maybe it's kind of like it doesn't result in a shot because Hartlepool hack it away. But other than that, it was a fairly dull game. As I say, just Hartlepool passing it around mostly in midfield, us waiting for them to come forward before tackling them. Just a all in all classic kind of stalemate. It was in added time that Hartlepool forced a save out of Howard, one of their best chances. So
yeah. The cruel mistress of football, though, it would be just the way for them to have got a goal in the last minute after Carlisle seemingly dominated most of the game. Now, Hartlepool started the season very, very well. They got off to a little bit of a flyer and have since started to stutter a bit. There's only 2 points between Carlisle and Hartlepool as things stand. And when you consider that we were looking like, you know, relegation fodder for quite a while, Hartlepool have fallen away a bit. And so the only thing I can really hope about that is that Hartlepool get a bit of second season syndrome next season and end up going down next year. But we'll see how things sort of pan out for the Monkey Hangers. And it is nice to have rivals in the league. So I don't really want Marra or Hartlepool to go anywhere. But we'll just see how the league pans out. Mate, 0-0, pretty fair result then from what you're saying, from what you saw on the day. But like we always try and do, we like to give a Foxes feature man of the match. We don't normally do it for midweek games, but since you were actually there, we'll just go ahead and do it, mate. Was there a certain player that stood out for you on the day to give your man of the match to?
I'm going to give me man of the match to Howard because, you know, more than anyone, did something to affect the scoreline, i.e. keep a clean sheet, pulled off a good save towards the end. He was decent in the game, dominated his area. I think we did well defensively overall. And Jack Armour had a decent game as well. So did Hartlepool. So both teams were kind of quite good defensively. The further forward you go, well, I mean, Patrick and Omotoyi didn't really get much to do, especially Omotoyi. Dickinson, again, he was decent because gave him man of the match the game before. He was the one who hit the crossbar. Again, speculative effort, so I don't want to give him too many points for having a go for outside the area, though it's nice to see. I'm going to give it to Mark Howard.
Mark Howard. Fair dues. There you go, Mark. He's starting to tally up a few this season.
Yeah,
now we'll push
a
on
few
to
clean sheets.
Yeah. Well, he's deservedly picking up his man of the match awards then. Right, so we'll kick on, mate, and we'll move on towards our second match crack portion of the podcast. And as I always do, I'll give you the starting lineup for Carlisle United's game against Forest Green Rovers. There's only one change, see if you can spot it. We had Mark Howard in goal with Senior, Feeney, McDonald and Armour at the back, Dickinson, Guy, Mellish and Gibson in the midfield with Patrick and Otomei playing up front again. Now, mate, you said just recently, Patrick and Otomei didn't really seem to link up incredibly well in the last game against Hartlepool. So were you maybe a little bit surprised to see the same pairing starting in the next game against Forest Green Rovers?
Not really. I'd still gone with them. I mean, I didn't say they didn't link up very well. They just didn't get much of the ball. And, the ball didn't spend much time in the attack. Despite the number of shots that it shows that we took against Hartlepool, it wasn't a game for the attackers.
See, this would have been the game where I would have given Otomei the bench, because he's played like the last 4 games in a row, and he still hasn't scored a goal. So maybe see what he's like as an impact sub. So give someone like Sam Fishburn the nod. You got Alessandra coming back from injury as well. He would have taken. He would have happily. Clough was on the bench as well. So there's plenty of people to have given 70 minutes to, and then still play Otomei, but give him the last 20 minutes and see if that. See if that gives him an impact as well. See if he's maybe more effective coming off the bench. But if you don't get to see that, then obviously it's another thing that we don't know. Yeah, I would have been more willing to give, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I like him. I'll give Sam Fishburn a go up front with Patrick. The two of them would have been in and around each other last year. Patrick and Fishburn doing a lot of shooting drills together in training. So, and it's two different types of attacker as well. Like Fishburn being your sort of like you hold them up, you pull the trigger type, you're dead ball finisher, you're in around the 6-yard box sort of menace, and Patrick being your get the ball down, run, look for the 1-2s kind of attacker. It just offers that little bit, of a different threat up front. What were you going to say, mate?
I'll just say, last season, Fishburn was kind of like deep within the academy squad. There wasn't even really much talk of him being promoted up to. So I don't think he'd have really done that much with Patrick. I don't know how often the academy and the senior team play together.
It depends on the manager normally. From what I've been told by a lot of ex-pros is that it depends on the manager. Now, someone like Alex Mitchell was, because he's a goalkeeper as well, so your position can matter as well. Yeah. So obviously in a League 2 team, you've only normally got 2 first-team goalkeepers. Yeah. But that's not always enough to be doing shooting drills and passing drills and everything else with all the first team at the same time. Or if you're doing positions as well, so if you're doing set pieces, defensively, and you need someone for striking training. And then also goalkeepers need their own training as well. So the academy lads, Alex Mitchell said, I think from the age of about 15, he was getting called over to go and train with the first team. But that might also be because of the position that he was in on the pitch. Yeah. You might just need the goalkeepers to do that extra training.
Yeah.
But, I think Sam Fishburn, especially when it comes to being a striker and a shooter, shooting drills in training, you give him a chance to go over the first team and just see what he's up against. But again, all speculative. don't know if that's 100% true. And I don't know how much he was in and around the first team training last season. But obviously this season, a lot of things have changed for him. And I'd imagine he's there day in, day out now, training with the first team. And some of his old youth teammates have been on the move this week, but we'll move on to that a little bit later on. We'll finish off the match crack that we've barely even started. I've already gone through the lineups for Carlisle United's game against Forest Green Rovers. It's a 3-0 defeat, mate. We're not going to go into a crazy amount of detail on a 3-0 defeat because it doesn't make good content for us Carlisle United fans, but obviously we'll won't skip over some of the performances on the day. And Morgan Feeney had a bit of a day off. And, you know, I think it's 2 times now in the last 3 games that Feeney has made an error that has led to a goal. There isn't any really, well, there is now that we've signed somebody, but at the time, not really any options to take Feeney out of the side, other than obviously putting Whelan into that position. But I don't think Millen is considering Whelan as a centre back anymore. I think he considers him to be a defensive midfielder now, which is fine. It's worked out really good for them so far this season doing that. Probably the most effective tactical move Millen has made when it comes to picking his starting 11s and dealing with just what he's got in front of him. Now, it only took 16 minutes, unfortunately, for Forest Green Rovers to break the deadlock against Carlisle United. It was a little bit of it is a little bit disappointing. It was a speculative ball in, which Feeney failed to sort of deal with. The ball may have bobbled, which might have led to it bouncing off Feeney in an awkward way, and then the ball going into the back of the net. Didn't seem to be anything Howard could really do about it, although maybe could have commanded his area slightly better before the ball came in, so he would have just collected it easily rather than Feeney even going for it in the first place. Now, I don't want to be too critical. Forest Green Rovers, top of the league, they're running away with the league. It is expected that a team who up until very recently were looking like relegation fodder, and we're not completely clear of the mist either, by the way, but it's still disappointing to concede a goal in that way. And it's the opening goal, which it was against, the last time that he made the same mistake. The last game we went to.
That was
Crawley.
Crawley.
So it's a disappointment when the first goal you concede is from an error. Now, I don't want to slate Feeney. I feel like Feeney's been playing very well, but this might have been the time, I mean, for the next game anyway, that you might consider just giving him a break, because he's been playing week in, week out, and you know, he might just need a break.
I mean, it was a different kind of error. Sort of, you know, cross coming in and he puts it into his own net, facing his own goal. I'm not saying he's kind of blameless for it, but it's not quite the same as, you know, the error he made at Crawley, where he just basically got caught on the ball. This is kind of, you know, dangerous ball in towards goal. Feeney has to do something with it. He could probably have done a lot better with it. It didn't look like, you know, it was one of them that bounced off him. He does get to put a foot to it, and if you look at where he's standing as well, he probably could have put that out for the corner. So you know, it is an error. It's not the same error. I don't think it's quite as bad an error, but
it's more an in the moment kind of thing. This one, it's more of a lack of reaction, a lack of judgment, a lack of decision making. Maybe you're right. When that ball's coming in, you've got to admit it looked like he was in 2 minds. Am I going to header it? Am I going to try and get my leg on it? What am I going to go for to get rid of the ball? And then he looked like he went for a header at first, which meant he took his eye off the ball, and then as he did that, he changed his mind halfway through, then tried to like sort of throw a limb towards it, and then he just ran out of time to react. So by the time it came off his limbs, it was just, you know, too late, and just caught between 2 minds. And you've got a player like Morgan Feeney, who is on paper and has been a very good performer for Carlisle United. But also what you can't forget is that he's never in his career up until this point had a run in a first team playing senior men's football. So when it's going week in, week out for the first time ever, and you maybe, these kind of mistakes are going to happen at this level of the game. So you don't want to criticize him too much, but these are important goals that his mistakes are letting in.
Yeah, I mean, he's 22 and he's got, that run has to kind of come at some point. And I mean, the error, it could just be a lack of finesse. I mean, sometimes the ball doesn't go where you try to kick it. If you're kind of playing football with your mates down the park, that happens all the time because you've got a foot like 50 pence piece and the ball just pings off anywhere. If you're a professional footballer, it happens more rarely. Still sometimes happens. Sometimes you'll see a player attempt to pass or a long ball and the ball just goes nowhere near where they intended to go. And you can see from the look on the player's face, just fluffed that one, so it could just be that, it wasn't necessarily so much of a mental thing. He had it all in his mind under control. It does look like he's kind of stretching a bit to get to the ball. So maybe he didn't time his run or he wasn't alert enough. But, he's kind of thinking, I'm going to put this behind and just 50 pence foots it into the back of the net.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it, mate. Yeah, he probably, all the intention in the world for us was him just to knock it out for some kind of corner or something like that. And it just came too fast for him, ran out of reaction time and fluffed it. It happens at this level of the game. It happens at higher levels of the game as well. And so we'll move away from that one, mate. So it's 1-0 Forest Green as far as the match crap story is unfolding. And that was it up until half time. Carlisle were actually growing into the game, to be fair, towards the end of the first half. After that goal went in, Carlisle started to push a little bit against Forest Green Rovers, and maybe, might have been a little bit unfortunate to go in at half-time, still 1-0 down. But when we came out for the second half, Forest Green, they came out as league leaders, didn't they? They came out, they'd obviously had a bit of a team talk, they'd obviously had a bit of a refresh, a bit of a refire, a bit of a rejiggle, reshape, and they came out for the second half absolutely flying. The second goal, the fullback just tore through our defence. From what I've seen, the fullback just was weaving in and out and just tore through the defence. And it's a bit cheeky for Stevens, the attacker, to have stolen the ball off his foot just as he came to strike it. The fullback did all the work, dribbled the ball into the box, and Stevens literally just took it off his toe and pulled the trigger. But that's what you pay goal scorers to do, is score goals. So maybe the fullback would let him off with that one. He'll take the assist, or he'll have to take the assist. Yeah,
I'm watching it now, and I think he loses. I think he loses control of the ball a bit. If you look at
I think that's what the attacker wants. I think that's the attacker's excuse.
Well, yeah, but if you look at where the ball is, but if you look at where the ball is before the Stevens runs in and kicks it, as I said, I don't know the name of the fullback, but he's got his back to goal by this point because he's kind of turned slightly away from goal and the ball is kind of slightly in front of him. He's going to do well to get a shot away from that position because he's got to stretch to reach the ball and somehow hook it over his right shoulder. So I think, so obviously Stevens this is kind of like the skill that attackers have. He's spotted the right, that ball's there for me to hit. I'm going to go hit it.
Yeah, he's doing his job. He's doing his job. He's done his job. But the fullback, really good run. You might be able to criticise the Carlisle United defence. Nobody really came to him quickly enough to close him down. When you're thinking about a Mellor, in those positions, it might have been a ball that he could have been able to stop. Or at least he would have took a yellow card, or at least took the foul. He's got the experience to know when to sort of bring those people down in those areas. Yeah. But yeah, just. It was a good run. It was a good run. I don't want to take too much away from Forest Green. I don't want to criticise Carlisle's defence too much. Sorry, my phone thinks I'm talking to it.
I mean, the problem starts right away with just like the through ball to Forest Green's number 25, which is just in acres of space. Again, like watching these highlights, I don't know where Jack Armour was prior to this coming in, but you can see like Jack Armour's a bit behind the rest of the defensive line, and from then on, he's got space to get into the box. The other defenders just have to leg it to him, and I think that's kind of like that kind of is their undoing. I mean, you can see McDonald spots the danger and bombs over there, but then because McDonald's got momentum and the fullback, number 18 actually is wearing, because McDonald's got momentum, it's easier to kind of skip it past him because McDonald's not going to turn around that quickly. So that again it's a problem that's created from the fact that he had so much space to run into. The other defenders have to absolutely bomb towards him to have any chance of stopping it, but then that makes them vulnerable to just having it flicked past them, which he does well. And he looks like he's lining up for a shot, and then he feints left, and that's the point where Stevens comes in.
Yeah. Stevens' 19th goal of the season so far for Forest Green Rovers. 19 goals, mate. Have we even scored 19 goals in the league this season?
I think we've scored. I need to have all these windows open. I keep having the league window open, and then I'll close it for whatever reason. And
just keep finding them and going backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, go on.
We have scored 19.
So we scored the same amount of goals as Matty Stevens for Forest Green Rovers. Now that wasn't it for Carlisle United's defence. There was another goal to go sailing past the goalkeeper, and probably this goal was the best example of a team that are top of the league and running away with it. Just relentless attacking. Carlisle cleared their lines momentarily, only to have the ball ran back at them, and a lovely little through ball was played into Matty, is it? The striker, into Matt, the striker. Jamil Matt, the striker, and he finished quite well. Not a lot you could really say about that last goal. Forest Green just flexing the superiority a little bit there. Relentless in the sense that, they would just keep going at Carlisle's back line, and then there was a clever little bit of 1-2 play that led towards the goal, and yeah, that's a league leader looking like champions to me. They're looking really good, Forest Green Rovers. Not a lot Carlisle's defence could have really have done other than maybe cleared their lines better than what they did.
That's something that I think we've kind of talked about them not doing that before. I can't remember which match it was specifically, but just generally not clearing our lines properly, always being kind of vulnerable to it coming back in, because if we clear it, but there's nobody to collect it, so it comes straight back because all our players are behind the ball, so the opposition can just bring it straight back into the attacking third, or just fluffing attempts at clearances, half clearing it. Midfielders failing to get on it, which is what happened this time, and just that area of the pitch between our defensive third and the midfield just being somewhere where opposition are just always kind of picking up the second ball in that area.
Yeah, it is a bit of a problem area at the moment. And, Millen defensively seems to have his head screwed on. So hopefully he can identify that and rectify it as soon as possible. Just, it does matter at this level of the game. Teams will, if they've got the game plan to, they're just going to push and keep pushing at you. And if you stay in your own half for too long in the League One, League Two and Championship levels, you don't retain possession. You get caught because you don't have ball-playing defenders in League One and Two. You can have ball-playing defenders in the Premier League, but you don't get ball-playing defenders in League One and Two, or at least you don't get good enough ones to trust with playing balls through your defence into the midfield. Mate, yeah, I'm not going to criticise Carlisle United too much for this result. I'm going to hand over to some of the Carlisle United supporters. I asked on the Facebook page, the Blue Army Podcast Facebook page, what they thought of Carlisle United's 3-0 defeat against Forest Green Rovers. And we've got 2 comments, one of which is short and not at all sweet. Don Donaldson says, not happy. And that's where he leaves his comment, just the 2 words, not happy. I think that's a little bit harsh. But before we go on to discuss Don Donaldson's point of view, I'll tell you what Mark Badger Midlin thought of the game. He said it was disappointing, but they are runaway leaders for a reason. It was always going to be a hard game, but put it behind us and move on to Sutton. I agree with both of them a little bit. It's never a good thing to lose. Short and not at all sweet from Don Donaldson. Not happy. Yeah, fair enough. But I think Mark has really stepped up and summed it up quite well.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways to look at the result, and I've seen both. I've seen fans, describing both of them. I mean, one way you can look at it is like Forest Green have won 16 out of their 25 games. They're beating far better teams than us, and they've only conceded 21 goals, which is the second best defence after Tranmere, who've conceded quite a few. In a normal season where you don't have Tranmere's ridiculous defensive record, Forest Green would have the best defence with only 21 conceded. Scored 51. Got 2 high scoring forwards. So, I mean, so there's 2 ways you can look at it. One is just that after a good run, we've come up against far and away the best team in the division at their place, and the game has gone pretty much as you'd expect it. But you can kind of look deeper into our particular failings in this game and what we've done wrong, whether there was a lack of fight, and also the fact that, as we've said, as you've alluded to yourself, Forest Green in the first half were a bit there to be got at, and then, went in 1-0 up and then came out in the second half and just kind of dominated. But I've kind of heard the opinions of Forest Green fans as well, not regarding this game, but earlier in the season, so even before then. And they were saying that if anyone's going to beat us, it's teams that come out of the blocks fast and can maybe get a goal or even 2, because we quite often look fairly ordinary in the opening half an hour and only come into, and tend to kind of then just blow teams away in the second half if we're still in the game. But they're saying that the games that they have been beaten are games where half an hour in, Forest Green, as they usually are, they say, are still yet to get going, are already 2-0 down or something.
Yeah, I mean that's been a bit of an effect of Keith Millen, I would say, is that he has said in a few press conferences the way that he wanted to sort of instill a playing style in Carlisle is the fact that we just don't get out of the game. We stay in the game, basically.
Yeah.
Quite happy to draw games at home and away, but the whole point of the Millen game plan is just to stay in the game so you can steal it in the last 5 minutes of a game with a set piece, with a counter attack, with tired legs, with the right sort of game plan, dragging those teams down and grinding them to the point where hopefully they screw things up in the last sort of 10 to 15 minutes. And that's where we get the points. And that was quite evident from his early success at Carlisle United. He soaked up the pressure, kept the ball, didn't go for the long ball, kept the ball in possession, even though we're not scoring goals. So if you keep position and you're not scoring goals, then, you are just knocking it about your midfield and your defence, and it could become a bit of a snore fest to watch for the supporters. But the proof is in the pudding, and we're now, 7 points away from the relegation zone with a couple of games in hand. So the proof is in the pudding. that it might be slightly more boring to watch. It's not as an attacking style what Beach was playing last year, not as exciting as what Beach was playing last year, but it is consistent and it is picking us up the points and it is doing what we need it to do in order for us to stay in this division, which didn't look that achievable about 2 months ago.
Yeah, playing in an attacking style, you kind of need the attackers to do that, which we currently don't have. So, you know, I can understand kind of Millen thinking, I don't want to kind of like race forward all the time if, you know, we don't really have anyone who is going to take the ball there and put it in the net.
Yeah, and we'll see what Clough can do eventually, hopefully. Otherwise, that's just a big load of wages that have.
I'd like to see what Millen can get out of Clough.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see. I don't know how long Touré's out injured for, but I'm curious to see if Millen can get something out of Touré.
But he's been training. He's been doing solo training. I've seen it on his Instagram that he's been training in the Neil Centre.
If he comes back before the end of the season, I'm sure Millen probably wants to have a look at him, you know, before the summer. And he'll have seen, probably clips of some of Touré's better games with us, and he might be the right kind of manager to get that sort of performance out of Touré. So you never know. That could be a sort of coming towards the end of the season. That could be kind of an attacking option for us.
Yeah. I mean, it would be an exciting process. It's like having a new signing, maybe without having to make a new signing. Hopefully, you'll have that sort of like turnaround impact. And yeah, it would be quite nice just have that extra option up front for like the last 8 games of the season. Somebody that can make an impact. Touré was always brought in as a player that is an impact player, somebody with some skills in his arsenal, and he's just never really been able to get going. Maybe never felt the backing of the confidence from any of the managers that he's had since he has made that step into the Carlisle United team, and he hasn't really had a proper good sort of run to sort of see what he can do. He maybe he has actually, maybe he has had a run of like 5 or 6 games to sort of see what he can contribute.
The very start of his time with us, we kind of like. Last season, we started the season quite poorly, but Touré was kind of like the one who looked bright. And then as we improved, Touré kind of faded a bit. Well, he lost his spot in the starting lineup. Still kind of popped on here and there. Didn't score. I think he scored like 2 goals, and one of them was in the pizza trophy.
Yeah.
But you just never know, really, when you've got a new manager and a player that he's not had a chance to look at yet, a player that has some skills, whether that new manager is able to either he knows how to use him tactically or he knows how to coach him and is able to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, there is something about Touré's personality that makes me feel like maybe he's not what's the best words to say for Touré? Maybe he's not the most emotionally mature player at the club and in the dressing room. It seems like he's had a couple of like bust-ups in the past with the competition in his position. He doesn't seem to feel very comfortable here, which is why he's happy to sort of go out on loan. He's happy to go home to France for 2 months and 2 weeks in the middle of the season. Little moves like that don't necessarily scream professionalism in a footballer. It seems like he's quite an emotional player. Now, if Millen brings him back into the fold and he starts, 1 or 2 games and doesn't score and then gets put back on the bench, is he just going to go back to having, a bad personality to have around the changing room? Because obviously he's had a bad enough attitude problem in the past for him to get moved away from the first team squad. So he's not affecting, the mentality of the first team squad. And he does seem, a lot of footballers don't react to things on social media, and Jimmy Touré does react to things on social media. But he's also, he's got 2,000, 3,000 followers. He's not got 1 million followers like Ronaldo does, but he's making those sort of like moves. He wants to get seen. He wants people to talk about him. He has got a bit of an ego. You don't disappear to France and then make an Instagram post and tag your location on it, unless you want to ruffle some feathers and, you know, create some news of some kind. You know, there are obviously Carlisle fans sitting at home going, well, what are you doing in France? It's Christmas. It's Christmas time. You need to be, you know, an option on the bench. You know, it's congestive fixture list time of year. And this time last year, he was in France for a bit, but it didn't really matter in the end because we had that big old break around this time last year where we didn't play any football for nearly 4 weeks. Mate, we've had a good match crack. I don't think we can really give the man of the match to anybody in that game, but we did give a man of the match to the midweek game, which we normally don't do. So I'm going to consider the scales balanced in that aspect of things, and we'll just crack on and move forward, and we'll look at Carlisle United's next league opponents, who are Sutton United, sitting pretty in the automatic promotion places in the league, a team that a lot of people wouldn't have thought would be occupying one of the automatic promotion places at any point.
I mean, they're not there anymore.
Season.
Matches last night.
Right, okay. But yeah, I mean, like, they're still sitting inside the playoffs and around those automatic promotion places, and they're undefeated in the league so far this this year, sorry.
Undefeated.
So far undefeated in the so far undefeated in the league this calendar year. So they've started the new year pretty well. Couple of draws, couple of wins, and I mean, they are flying, mate, but they're not untouchable, are they?
Well, no, I mean, no one really is. I mean, it's weird to think that, you know, they're up there. They've lost 8 games in 26. We've lost 11, so we've only lost 3 games more than they have. So, like, it's, and obviously the difference is they're winning games, not drawing them, as well as, you know, you convert those 3 extra defeats that we have, you convert them to wins, and that's like 9 extra points. So, like, but, you know, the margins, you know, it's not gulfs between teams. Forest Green aside, and maybe Oldham and Scunthorpe, unless things change there. You know, certainly Oldham, I think. Forest Green aside, there's not really gulfs between anyone in the team. They're just like incrementally better the higher up you go. Sutton, though, did beat us 4-0, the heaviest defeat of the season last time out. So, and, you know, they are a good team and they're on good form. So it's going to be a very tough game.
Yeah, it's another tough game coming up for the Cumbrians, but I cannot predict a loss, and I never will. So Carlisle United are going to beat Sutton by 3-0. We're going to backlash them. We're going to backlash them. We're going to give them what we owe them. That's what we're going to do. What about you, mate? What you say?
I'll go 0-0. That'll be a good result. The 0-0, yeah. The fans won't like it because I think people are getting sick of us not scoring, but, you know, we don't really score, so 0-0.
No, I mean, you'd hope playing at home there'd be a couple of goals, but that doesn't mean anything this year at all. Yeah, there's just not a lot of goals going in, and who knows? By Saturday there might be another attacking option for Carlisle United, and you know, rather than starting rumours and drip feeding some news, I'll just bash forwards and I'll do the news roundup, mate. This is the last little segment that we'll do before we finish off today. So yeah, as I sometimes do, I have been scouring the internet for Carlisle United news this week, and some of the articles that have drawn my attention are as follows. Josh Dixon has found himself being shipped out on loan to none other than the Workington Reds for a month-long loan deal. Now, when you look at some of the other loan moves Carlisle United have been making over the course of this transfer window, you might have made a case that Josh Dixon has been short-handed, maybe given a bit of a lesser of a challenge. But nevertheless, it is important that he really starts playing some men's football and just gets some fitness, because we've all been told about his potential
Yeah,
we've just not been able to see any of it.
been a bit of a nightmare for him. The amount, the injuries that he's had. Did he have? Well, he had one injury that kept him out for the whole season. Then did he have like a separate injury that kept him out for a different whole season? He's had an injury this season as well. It's really disappointing for him. He does look. I mean, I've seen him play in pre-season friendlies, and he does look good. Obviously, with the caveat that things always look different pre-season, but he looks like on a par with the likes of McCarron and Galloway and Branthwaite. All well, obviously Galloway never actually played for us, but all of which had potential and got their moves. Branthwaite was excellent for us. McCarron was decent for us, but moved away before we could see kind of like any kind of breakout season. And I was like really hoping that Josh Dixon would have a breakout season, but he has picked up an injury and it's really, really tough on him. The fact that he's still around is testament to how much potential he's got, because a young lad with less potential who'd had so many injuries probably would have gotten let go earlier, but we're determined to keep him around because we would really like to see if he can, to see if he has this potential. So I really, really hope that the move to Workington goes well for him. You never know. We could see him back here before the end of the season if it goes that well. Obviously, you're limited on how well it can go at a place like Workington because it's a lower level than you might think or you might want, but has the advantage it's a club with good ties to Carlisle and is able to still spend a lot of his time training with us. So just really, really hope, really hope for him that his career can start taking an upward turn.
Yeah, I really hope so, mate. I really hope so. Like you said, the rumours of his potential have been, wetting the lips of many a Carlisle United fan for a couple of years now. We've just not been able to enjoy what he can really do. And hopefully, this will lend itself to him not only playing some men's football, but getting his fitness to where it needs to be to just jump back into a League Two campaign if he gets called upon. And well, I mean, I guess we'll just see how things go. But there's a bit of an update on how Josh Dixon's situation has been getting on at Brunton Park. Now, one of the lads who came through Carlisle United's youth academy system didn't play for Carlisle United, but has been finding his feet amongst the professional leagues of football. Manchester City's Cumbrian-born goalkeeper James Trafford has been on loan at Bolton Wanderers. He's played 2 games professionally so far for Bolton Wanderers in goal. And it's one of those Dean Henderson situations, mate. If he cracks on and has a good career, we could be financially rewarded quite nicely for this one. But staying in and around goalkeeper news, Dean Henderson himself has said that he is willing to stay at Manchester United and fight it out for a first team place, which as a consequence means that there will not be a large couple of £1 million windfall heading towards Brunton Park as part of a sort of some kind of transfer percentage that you get when you found the player or however that goes.
Maybe because I mean he's probably looking at the goalkeeping situation at Man U and thinking, I mean, De Gea's coming to the end of his career and hasn't been overly consistent over the years. He always seems like he's under some sort of pressure, and it's just kind of thought, I've got a chance to stake my claim and become first team keeper at Man U. Then Real Madrid buy him for 100 million.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, there's no expiry date on the percentages and things like that. When somebody takes a player away from the youth academy, there's no expiry date on these clauses. So we could still yet to benefit. And obviously, if he stays and plays at Man United before he gets sold, there's just more benefit for Carlisle. Now, if the young lad that I was just mentioning there, James Trafford, if he can get himself a couple of games at Man City, I mean, that'll be great. but also in the same ilk, if he continues to be loaned out, he might get signed by somebody, and there might be a few million in the bank coming through that way. So it's something to be said about the fact that Carlisle's sort of youth academy scouting systems have really been what does seem to keep the modern club afloat at the moment, is being able to find those young lads, get them trained to a certain standards, and then lure in these not necessarily big spending, all of these clubs, but these clubs with the contacts that we have to sign these players up, and then that secures our financial future for the next X years going forwards. And that seems to be the way we're doing things at the moment. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. We've got money coming in, which we previously hasn't been the case. And it's not the case when you keep bringing in players on loan and then just letting them go back to the clubs. When you bring through players, you get a reputation for bringing through players. And I think we're doing quite well as things stand at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a few clubs that have that reputation now, kind of like the likes of Exeter and Colchester. It used to just be Crewe that had that reputation, but I think like clubs starting to think that this is how we need to do business now. So we kind of hopefully slowly kind of catching up to that, and with with Eric Kinder now back in the academy. So he's back. This is part time now, I think, but. Yeah, I mean, he has a good reputation for bringing players through.
Yeah. So, I mean, the future looks bright. Eh? The future looks pretty bright as far as young players coming through goes. Talking about players coming through, Carlisle United have signed teenage Southampton centre half Daniil Simiyu, Cameroon-born. He's the fourth signing of the January transfer window. He's just on loan up until the end of the season. He's been seen to be a replacement for the Arsenal loanee Jonathan Desailly, although arguably has a better reputation. Not necessarily a lot of first team appearances for anybody, but neither did Jonathan. And the fact that he's been brought from Chelsea's youth system and then signed over by the Saints for a price reported to be around 1.5 million last July. He's obviously held in quite high esteem by Southampton. He's played for both Southampton and Chelsea in the English Football League trophy as a part of their under-21s sides. He's been on the bench in the Premier League this season as well. So, he is quite close to the Southampton first team, or he was quite close to the Southampton first team. They're obviously feeling that it's important for him to go out and pick up some games. And he's obviously eager to do that, because if you're going from Chelsea to Southampton all the way up to Carlisle, you're obviously quite committed to playing football. I think I've made that statement before. Mate, obviously it's another unknown player.
Yeah.
It's not the striker that everyone seems to be waiting for, but it's a smart decision, isn't it? Because I think we've already discussed today that, Whelan seems to be getting designated as a midfielder these days, and that leaves a gap in the centre-back position, because you've only got Hayden and you've only got Feeney in there as sort of like registered professional centre-backs.
And Feeney.
Yeah, McDonald and Feeney. So it's a smart decision.
Maybe we need to move Mellish back there.
Maybe it's a smart decision, but I don't think it's gonna really. I don't think he's gonna push into the Carlisle United team. I think he's there in case we get an injury. I don't think Feeney and McDonald, that centre back pairing, needs to be disturbed. They seem to have quite a good relationship going between the two of them. Obviously. Yeah, like we've already mentioned, Feeney's made a few mistakes. That might mean that there's a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of lack of confidence. Maybe he just needs a break and a shot in the arm to sort of be like, right, we're going to drop you out the team. And then when you're sitting on the bench watching somebody play in your position, it naturally just picks your game up. It naturally just sparks your competition. And hopefully that'll be a lift for Feeney. And he can push both of those defenders, McDonald and Feeney, into making slightly better performances, because at the moment there isn't really any competition for either of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's another Premier League team, and I think I've already kind of like talked about like when we brought in Otomoy, and he just looks like a like for like replacement for Dinzey. The other thing, but the kind of like things they can kind of be a bit more optimistic is that he's a bit more further in his career than Dinzey is. I don't think he's any older, but he has had, he's been on the bench at least in Southampton. So, whereas Dinzey was still just playing academy football until he came to us. If you've seen him in the pictures, he looks quite built.
Mm-hmm.
He looks fit and he looks strong. Whereas I think Dinzey still had a very kind of like
Teenage
physique. The teenage physique. Simeu, he looks fit and strong, and also I had this kind of big thing about teenagers coming from the Premier League when we signed Otomoy, but he looks a lot better than that Otomoy does. Whatever his prospects are for us this season is, he's coming to be part of the team and to be, to be part, to be one of those who's really kind of pushing to be our main striker. So I think kind of credit goes to Keith Millen that he's kind of is bought in a Premier League team, but one who isn't like a Premier League team in Otomoy. So hopefully he's done it again with Simeu.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting the effort in, Keith Millen. He's said that he's driven down to Southampton twice to watch this lad play, and he's obviously been having a couple of meetings with him. So he's been in around, he's done the footwork. He's not just taken the lad off the reputation that he's got. He's put the effort in to go and see him. Southampton's a hell of a drive, and you've got a full-time job as well to be fit. Well, it's part of his job, I suppose, in a way. But it's different to sending a scout.
And he won't live in Carlisle. I don't know where he lives.
Yeah, it's different to sending a scout all the way down there, doing it yourself, and then actually talking to the player, because you'd imagine if this lad's got a good reputation, we weren't the only team that would have been interested in taking him until the end of the season. So I think on paper it looks like a good signing, but like I said, I wouldn't expect him to be stepping into the first team week in, week out. I think he's there to cover in case of suspension and injury and things like that. The last bit of news that I've got, and we've been rambling for a bit today, but the last bit of news that I've got is the fact that Gary Dicker, former Carlisle United midfielder Gary Dicker, has retired this week from professional football. Gary Dicker had a bit of a I don't know how you'd say, a bit of a whimpering end to his career. He was happily playing for the Brighton under-23s side alongside a coaching role that he had with the Premier League club. But for the last 2 years, he's been playing as the Brighton designated over-23 player, and just been playing academy football basically for the last 2 years while he's been coaching over there at Brighton. So yeah, I mean, Gary Dicker, player that scored a hell of an audacious strike for Carlisle United during his time here. If you want to see that, just Google Gary Dicker Carlisle United. You'll see one of the best volleys you've seen at this level of the game for a very long time. Wills, any fond memories of Gary Dicker?
Yeah, the goal that you talk about. You remember, the thing with him and Billy Painter, less fond memories of Billy Painter, but then they both scored in that game to kind of keep us in the league.
The Plymouth game.
Dicker obviously felt was a bit more kind of like gracious with it, where Billy Painter almost wanted to rub it into the Carlisle fans that he'd scored. But I was kind of like Gary Dicker. I remember when we let him leave in Kilmarnock, I think it was. And it was as if we just let Lionel Messi leave. Some of the comments from the Carlisle fans.
He was brought in with a good reputation, and if if you're a young Carlisle United fan, you sometimes rate the players based off their FIFA ratings or the Football Manager ratings and things like that, which, you know, when they're not playing week in, week out, but they're the best player in your FIFA team or something, the two things don't compute. And Gary Dicker was one of those players where on FIFA and Football Manager, he was one of the more highly rated players. So the young section of the fans go, this is our best player. Why is he not playing? But there was a lot of things that went down this season. He was a part of that sort of controversial player revolt over extra training under Keith Curle, that whole thing that kicked off. And yeah, I mean, it was a weird time that Gary Dicker was with the club anyway, that transition between Kavanagh into Curle and just the survival campaigns that were around those times as well. Wills, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure, mate. And I mean, I've got to crack on with the rest of the day, get this bad boy edited and push on. That's enough from us this week. It is now 5 to 12 in the morning, January 26th. This episode will be released by about 5 o'clock. And I hope you're enjoying them. I really do. Every single Wednesday, 5 p.m, there's a new episode of the Blue Army podcast. This has been episode 52, and I have been joined by the lovely Wills. And all we really have left to say is bye for now.
Bye.